Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going to tackle something you specifically requested, single tasking.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, we're going to see if it's really the productivity powerhouse it's claimed to be,
hmm
how to actually make it work, in our tech-filled world, and what's at stake if you're aiming to truly master your focus.
It's a big one.
It is a big one.
Yeah.
Our source material is this article from Motion's blog. It's appropriately titled Single Tasking, Mastering the Art of Deep Productive Work.
Catchy.
Yeah, right. Motion, you might know, makes productivity software.
hmm
But their writer, Jared Posey, brings up some interesting points that go beyond just selling an app.
Right.
You ready to get into it?
Absolutely. What's particularly interesting here is the way this deep dive connects to bigger issues like how our brains handle information overload. We'll be exploring cognitive load, the impact of constant multitasking on our stress levels, and even how single tasking might be the key to unlocking more satisfaction in both your work and personal life.
Okay, so first let's just define our terms. Single tasking, as you might guess, is about focusing on one thing at a time.
Right.
Multitasking, on the other hand, is trying to do multiple things at once, often with the belief that we're being more efficient. The irony is both approaches aim to boost productivity. But the question is, do they really deliver? This article argues that multitasking might actually be doing more harm than good.
It's a common misconception that our brains are wired for multitasking.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
in reality, what we're often doing is rapidly switching between tasks. And each time we switch, there's a cost. Think of your brain like a computer. Every time you open a new program or tab, it takes up processing power and slows everything down. That's essentially what's happening when we try to multitask. Our cognitive load increases, and our brains struggle to keep up.
So it's like trying to stream a movie, play a game, and video chat all at the same time. Everything starts to lag and buffer.
Exactly.
Okay. It's interesting because the article doesn't completely dismiss multitasking. There are times when it can actually be beneficial.
Absolutely. Certain tasks lend themselves well to multitasking, especially those that are more routine or don't demand a lot of mental effort.
Like what?
Think about folding laundry while listening to music or brainstorming during a walk.
Okay, yeah.
These activities don't really compete for the same mental resources, so you can effectively do both at once.
It's like how I can walk my dog and listen to an audiobook without either activity suffering.
Mm.
But the key seems to be choosing the right activities to combine. The article challenges us to identify those tasks where multitasking actually works.
Exactly. It's about being mindful and recognizing the difference between tasks that complement each other and those that clash. So before you automatically start multitasking, take a moment to consider if it's truly the best approach.
Now, let's get to the good stuff. The benefits of single tasking. The article highlights enhanced productivity, reduced stress, and greater satisfaction as major perks. It makes sense. If you're truly focused on one thing, you're more likely to produce higher quality work. Plus, imagine the stress relief that comes from not constantly juggling a million things in your head.
The article paints a vivid picture of this with an example of a business professional struggling to keep up with a demanding workload.
Oh yeah, I can relate to that.
Right. They're constantly bombarded with emails, calls, deadlines, leading to a constant state of stress and overwhelm. But when they shift to single tasking, prioritizing tasks, and focusing on them one at a time, a remarkable change occurs. Their stress levels decrease, the productivity increases, and they actually start to enjoy their work again.
That sounds amazing. I know I've definitely had those moments where focusing on one thing at a time has allowed me to produce much better work and feel less stressed in the process. But how do we actually implement single tasking? I mean, in today's world, distractions are everywhere. The article delves into some practical tips and strategies to make it work, starting with setting priorities.
The article introduces the Eisenhower matrix as a helpful tool for prioritization.
Okay.
This matrix helps you categorize tasks based on urgency and importance,
Got it.
so you can focus on what truly matters and delegate or eliminate the rest.
I've used the Eisenhower matrix before, and it's definitely helpful for figuring out where to start. But even when you know your priorities, distractions are lurking around every corner, especially in the digital age. The article talks about a distraction audit as a key strategy to identify and minimize those pesky interruptions.
It's a simple but effective exercise. Take a day or two to really pay attention to what pulls your focus away from your tasks. Is it social media notifications, email pings, or maybe just the constant urge to check your phone?
Yeah, all of the above.
Once you pinpoint your personal distraction patterns, you can start implementing solutions.
Like turning off those notifications. That seems like a good first step.
Absolutely. And it's not just about digital distractions. Think about your physical workspace as well. Is it cluttered and disorganized? Do you have a comfortable chair and adequate lighting? All of these factors can impact your ability to focus.
The article mentions that motion software can help with some of this, but it also emphasizes the importance of non-tech solutions like mindfulness and even just taking breaks to step away from the screen. It's not all about relying on apps to solve our focus problems.
Right. Sometimes the best thing you can do is step away from your desk, take a walk in nature, or simply engage in a mindful activity to clear your head and reset your focus.
Okay, so we've got prioritizing and minimizing distractions covered. What else can our listener do to make single tasking a reality? The article dives into a whole bunch of time management techniques, but they're just listed one after the other. It's a little overwhelming.
I think it's important to remember that not every technique will work for everyone.
Right.
It's about finding what resonates with you and your personal work style.
Mm.
The article mentions techniques like the Pomodoro technique, focus sprints, and time blocking. But let's dive a little deeper into a couple of these to see how they actually support single tasking.
Okay, let's start with the Pomodoro technique. I've actually tried this one before, and it's pretty straightforward. You set a timer for 25 minutes, work on one task without distractions, and then take a 5-minute break. Rinse and repeat. But what's the connection to single tasking?
The key is in the structured breaks.
Yeah.
Those 5-minute pauses aren't just for grabbing a coffee. They're actually crucial for resetting your cognitive load, allowing your brain to declutter and prepare for the next 25-minute sprint of focused work. It's almost like giving your brain a mini vacation so it can come back refreshed and ready to tackle the next task with renewed focus.
That's a really interesting way to think about it. It's not just about powering through work nonstop. It's about strategically taking breaks to maintain that laser focus throughout the day.
Exactly. It's about working smarter, not harder. And another technique that aligns beautifully with single tasking is time blocking.
Okay, time blocking. Explain how that works and how it helps us single task.
Time blocking is essentially scheduling specific blocks of time on your calendar for particular tasks. It's about being intentional with your time and energy. Let's say you need to write a report. Instead of just squeezing it in whenever you have a free moment, you actually block off a 2-hour chunk on your calendar specifically for that task. This helps you stay focused and prevents other tasks from bleeding into that dedicated time.
It's almost like creating boundaries around your tasks. It sounds like a great way to ensure you're dedicating sufficient time to important activities without getting sidetracked by less urgent matters.
Precisely. And it aligns perfectly with single tasking because you're essentially creating a container for focused work. During that blocked off time, you commit to working on that single task and nothing else. It's a powerful way to enhance both your productivity and the quality of your work. But remember, all of these techniques, from the Pomodoro technique to time blocking, are just tools. They're not magic bullets. The real magic happens when you use them intentionally and consistently.
So it's not about just trying a technique once and giving up if it doesn't immediately solve all your focus problems.
Yeah,
It's about making a conscious effort to incorporate these strategies into your daily routine.
exactly. The article emphasizes that single tasking is a skill you cultivate over time.
I like that single tasking as a skill. Makes it feel achievable, something you can work on and improve. It's not about being perfect, it's about progress.
Absolutely. And this leads us to a really interesting point. How do we maintain single tasking in the digital age, where we're constantly bombarded with distractions and demands on our attention? This is where the concept of digital resilience comes in.
Okay, digital resilience sounds intriguing. Break that down for us.
Essentially, it's about learning to leverage technology without letting it rule our lives. It's about being mindful and intentional in our use of technology, choosing tools and strategies that support our focus, and knowing when to disconnect altogether.
So it's not about becoming a tech-phobic hermit and shunning all technology.
Not at all. It's about recognizing that technology can be both a powerful tool and a major source of distraction. The key is to find a balance to develop a healthy relationship with technology that serves our needs and enhances our well-being.
That makes a lot of sense. So what are some specific strategies for boosting our digital resilience? The article mentions a few, like using productivity apps and managing notifications.
Those are great starting points. Think about the apps you use on a daily basis. Do they support your focus, or do they constantly pull you away from what you're trying to accomplish? There are some fantastic apps out there that can help you minimize distractions, manage your time effectively, and even create a more focused digital environment. But it's also about setting boundaries.
like turning off notifications during specific times of the day or designating certain areas as tech-free zones.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of a good old-fashioned digital detox. Sometimes the best thing you can do for your focus and well-being is to step away from the screens altogether and reconnect with the real world. Go for a walk in nature, read a book, have a face-to-face conversation with a friend. These are the activities that nourish our souls and recharge our mental batteries. Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about digital resilience, which is such a crucial skill in our always-on world. It's not about fearing tech, but about using it on our terms, right?
Exactly. It's like we've given technology this unspoken permission to rule our attention, but we can take that power back. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. What are some actionable things our listeners can do to minimize distractions and reclaim their focus?
Let's start with something simple but often overlooked. Your physical workspace.
Okay.
Even if you're not in a traditional office, having a dedicated space where you can focus can make a world of difference.
You mean like not working from my bed with Netflix in the background? Guilty as charged.
Well, maybe not always the best setup. It's about creating an environment that signals to your brain it's time to work. It doesn't have to be fancy, but a clear workspace, comfortable chair, and good lighting can do wonders.
I've actually been meaning to declutter my desk. It's amazing how a messy workspace can make my mind feel just as cluttered. So a clean desk equals a clear mind.
There's definitely a connection, but it's not just about physical clutter. Think about the visual distractions in your workspace. Are you constantly bombarded by notifications? Is your inbox open, tempting you to check it every 5 seconds? Minimizing these visual distractions is key to maintaining focus.
You're right. I'm notorious for having a million tabs open on my computer, plus my email, social media, and who knows what else. It's like a visual assault on my senses.
It's no wonder you're feeling distracted. One simple strategy is to close any tabs or programs you're not actively using. It's amazing how much mental space this can free up. And then there are the ever-present notifications.
Oh, those dreaded notifications. They're like little attention vampires constantly sucking away our focus.
A great tip from the article is to turn off as many notifications as possible. Do you really need an alert every time someone likes your Instagram post or comments on a YouTube video? Probably not.
You know, it's funny because I used to think checking those notifications was a way to take a break. But it actually makes me more distracted, not less.
Exactly. Those little dopamine hits we get from notifications might feel good in the moment, but they're actually fragmenting our attention and making it harder to focus on the task at hand. And it's not just about those obvious social media notifications.
You mean things like email and news alerts? I feel like I'm constantly bombarded with information.
That's the reality of the digital age. But we don't have to be slaves to it. The article suggests batching your email and news checks to specific times of the day. This way, you're in control of when you consume information rather than letting it control you.
That's a great idea. I've tried something similar before, and it really helps to reduce that feeling of overwhelm. It's like creating little pockets of calm amidst the digital chaos.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming your time and attention. And there are other things you can do to manage those digital distractions. Think about using website blockers to prevent yourself from getting sucked into time-wasting websites.
Oh, those can be lifesavers. I used one when I was writing my last big project, and it actually helped me meet the deadline. But sometimes it's not the websites, it's the people. I mean, how do you deal with interruptions from coworkers or family members when you're trying to single task?
That's a great question, and it's something the article touches on. It's about setting boundaries and communicating your need for focused time. If you're in an office, maybe you can find a quiet space to work or let your colleagues know that you're unavailable for a certain period of time.
I've definitely had to learn to be more assertive about my need for focus time, especially when working remotely. It's so easy to get pulled into impromptu meetings or conversations.
Absolutely. It's about protecting your time and energy. And sometimes that means politely but firmly saying no to requests that don't align with your priorities.
Speaking of priorities, we talked about setting them using the Eisenhower matrix. But beyond just knowing what's important, how do we structure our days to actually support single tasking? The article mentions a whole slew of time management techniques, but they're just listed one after the other. Which ones are most effective for single tasking? And how do they actually work?
Remember, not every technique is a perfect fit for everyone. It's about finding what resonates with you and your personal work style. But let's explore a couple of these in more detail.
Okay, let's start with one I've heard of but never fully understood. Time blocking. How does that actually work, and how does it help with single tasking?
Time blocking is essentially scheduling specific blocks of time on your calendar for particular tasks. Instead of just squeezing things in whenever you have a free moment, you're being intentional about how you allocate your time and energy. So let's say you need to write a report. Instead of just fitting it in between meetings, you might block off a 2-hour chunk on your calendar specifically for writing.
I'm starting to see how that could be helpful. It's almost like creating boundaries around your tasks, preventing them from bleeding into each other.
Exactly. It's like giving each task its own dedicated space and time. This helps you stay focused and prevents those less urgent tasks from creeping in and derailing your progress.
Okay, time blocking makes sense. But what about the Pomodoro technique? We touched on it earlier, but how does it actually help us a single task?
The beauty of the Pomodoro technique lies in its structured breaks. Those 5-minute pauses aren't just for grabbing coffee or checking your phone. They're actually crucial for resetting your cognitive load, allowing your brain to declutter and prepare for the next 25-minute sprint of focused work.
I never thought of it that way. So it's not about just powering through work nonstop. It's about strategically taking breaks to maintain focus throughout the day.
Exactly. It's about working smarter, not harder. And another technique that aligns beautifully with single tasking is something called focus sprints.
Focus sprints, that sounds intense.
It's actually quite simple. It's about dedicating a set amount of time, usually between 30 and 90 minutes, to working on a single task with laser-like focus. No distractions, no multitasking, just pure, undiluted focus on that one task.
It's like a supercharged Pomodoro session.
You could think of it that way. Focus sprints are particularly helpful for tasks that require deep thinking or creative problem solving.
It sounds like a great way to really get into a flow state and make significant progress on those challenging tasks. But with all these techniques, from time blocking to Pomodoro to focus sprints, it can feel a little overwhelming. Where do you even start?
Remember, these are just tools. They're not magic bullets. The real magic happens when you use them intentionally and consistently. Start with one technique that resonates with you and give it a try for a week or two. See how it affects your focus, productivity, and stress levels. If it's not working, try something else. The key is to experiment and find what works best for you and your unique work style.
So it's not about finding the perfect technique. It's about finding what works best for you.
Exactly. And it's not about being perfect, it's about making progress. Single tasking is a skill that you cultivate over time. You'll have days when you're laser focused and days when you struggle to stay on track, but the key is to keep practicing, keep experimenting, and keep refining your approach.
It's like any skill. The more you practice, the better you become.
Absolutely. And as you get better at single tasking, you'll start to notice the benefits not just in your work, but in other areas of your life as well.
You mean things like reduced stress, increased creativity, and greater overall well-being. That's what this deep dive is really all about, right?
Precisely. It's about more than just getting things done. It's about living a more focused, intentional, and ultimately fulfilling life.
So how do we take all of this information about single tasking and actually apply it in the real world, especially in the digital age where distractions are constantly vying for our attention? The article talks about developing digital resilience as a key to mastering single tasking in the digital age. But what does that actually look like in practice?
It's about being mindful and intentional in our use of technology, choosing tools and strategies that support our focus, and knowing when to disconnect altogether.
Okay, so it's not about becoming a tech-phobic hermit and shunning all technology.
Not at all. It's about recognizing that technology can be both a powerful tool and a major source of distraction. The key is to find a balance to develop a healthy relationship with technology that serves our needs and enhances our well-being.
That makes a lot of sense. So what are some specific strategies for boosting our digital resilience? The article mentions a few, like using productivity apps and managing notifications.
Those are great starting points. Think about the apps you use on a daily basis. Do they support your focus or do they constantly pull you away from what you're trying to accomplish? There are some fantastic apps out there that can help you minimize distractions, manage your time effectively, and even create a more focused digital environment. But it's also about setting boundaries.
Like turning off notifications during specific times of the day or designating certain areas as tech-free zones.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of a good old-fashioned digital detox. Sometimes the best thing you can do for your focus and well-being is to step away from the screens altogether and reconnect with the real world. Go for a walk in nature, read a book, have a face-to-face conversation with a friend. These are the activities that nourish our souls and recharge our mental batteries.
Wow, this is a lot to digest. I'm feeling inspired to make some changes in my own life. But before we get too carried away, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive and explore some final thoughts and takeaways for our listeners.
All right, we're back, ready to wrap up this single tasking deep dive. It's been a journey, huh? It really has.
We've debunked the multitasking myth. We've explored practical tips for reclaiming our focus, especially in this digital age. I feel like we've covered so much. What are some key takeaways for our listener? Things you want them to walk away with?
Well, I really hope they understand that single tasking, it's not just a productivity hack. It's more than that. It's a way of life.
For way of life, yeah.
It's about making that conscious choice to focus on one thing at a time,
Mm-hmm.
to be really present in the moment, to really engage deeply with whatever you're working on.
It's quality over quantity then.
Yeah, exactly.
Not just trying to cram more things into our crazy schedules.
Right. It's about making the most of the time we have, being intentional with our time and energy.
Choosing to focus on what really matters,
Absolutely. And letting go of the rest.
which is honestly easier said than done.
Oh, for sure. Especially in today's world.
Constantly bombarded with information and distractions.
It takes effort. It takes practice. It takes a willingness to challenge that idea that, always being busy means you're being productive.
Right, right. But the rewards are huge.
They are.
We've talked about, the benefits of single tasking, like
Yeah.
increased productivity, less stress, more job satisfaction. But I think there's something even deeper here.
Oh, definitely.
Something about single tasking that connects us to our work, to our lives, in a more meaningful way.
Totally agree. I think when we're constantly switching between tasks, we never really get the chance to fully engage with anything.
Yeah.
We're always half present, always distracted, always thinking about what's next on the to-do list. But when we single task, when we allow ourselves to be fully immersed in one activity, something magical happens.
We start to enjoy what we're doing.
Yes. And we tap into this level of creativity and focus that just isn't possible when we're trying to do a million things at once.
You reminded me of those times when, I've been so absorbed in a task that I totally lose track of time. Those are the times when I do my best work. That's when the best ideas come.
Those are the moments of flow, right?
Oh, yeah.
When everything clicks, we're operating at our peak.
Totally. And you're saying single tasking is a key to unlocking those moments.
It is. It's about creating the space for that deep work, for uninterrupted focus, for those magical moments of insight and inspiration.
But how do we create that space? We've talked about, the practical tips. Minimizing distractions, setting those priorities, using those time management techniques. But it feels like there's more to it than just following the rules.
It's about shifting our mindset,
Okay.
recognizing that single tasking isn't just a technique, it's a philosophy.
Whoa.
It's a way of approaching your work, your life, with intentionality, with focus, with a deep respect for the power of right now, the present moment.
It's about being mindful in our work and in our lives.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that our attention is precious, it's a resource, and we get to decide how we spend it.
So single tasking isn't just about getting stuff done. It's about living a more fulfilling life,
Yes.
being present in our interactions, enjoying those experiences, making the most of every moment.
Beautifully said. It's about reclaiming our focus, our sanity, and ultimately our joy.
What a perfect note to end on. I hope our listener feels empowered, to embrace the power of single tasking, to create a more focused and fulfilling life, to discover what happens when we allow ourselves to be fully present.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of single tasking. Until next time, stay curious, stay focused, and keep diving deep.